This segment sponsored by Foster Financial. It's time for another edition of Women's Wealth Wednesday with Foster Financial, where we speak about things that specifically impact females and their finances. And joining me is Caleb Doan, their Vice President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. I love what we're going to talk about today because as people, grow in life and they work in life, one of the things that they are excited to get to is retirement. But the biggest question is, what age? When should I? How do I prep and plan? So today we're going to continue the basic financial planning conversation, but this time talking about the target retirement date.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've been talking about kind of the key pieces in a financial plan, and I wanted to do this on Women's Wealth Wednesday just because right now it's actually less common for women to typically have a written financial plan than it is if you're a man. And
Really?
so it's something that we typically think that everyone should have a written financial plan. Everyone should be able to take the time to look through that. So we wanted to go through the key aspects of a financial plan. We've talked about cash flow analysis. We've talked about looking at risk for somebody.
Right.
And today we wanted to talk about targeting a certain date for retirement, which is always an exciting thing to talk about, right? It's like you're excited to look forward to that, depending on how far it is down the road, of course. But that's a piece of all the financial plans that we do is first setting a goal. And so if it's spouses, sometimes they have different ideas of where that target retirement date is. And so we want to, talk through that and ultimately align on what we want to shoot for our target retirement date. And then we can do an analysis to see, are you actually on track for that or not?
Are you on track? Okay, so rolling it back, I think it's interesting that you're saying that women really don't have financial plans. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, is it because majority of the time women handle the finances in the household and maybe they already have the financial plan up here and hadn't just written it out yet? Or is it, it wouldn't be a lack of planning. Do you know the reason as you interact with people and you're like, oh, you don't have a plan? Why?
Yeah. I don't think there really is a good reason, but it's just less likely for women to have a written financial plan than it is for men. And so I guess I really don't know what the rationale there is, but everyone needs one. And so, regardless of your gender, it's really important to have a written financial plan. But I think a lot of the education in the industry is really targeted toward men. And so that's something we're really trying to address even on this show is kind of change that up and target some of that education towards women. And maybe it's because there's just, this conception that, maybe men deal with the finances in the home more often or something like that. And so a lot of it's targeted towards them. We'd like to, take a step back and say, all right, let's focus some of this on women to see where we can help there.
So when it comes to, so aligning it with the target retirement date in the financial plan, which one comes first? Is it that you are having a financial plan and you're getting to the point of having a retirement date based off of that data? Or are you choosing your retirement date and now you're needing to build a plan to be cohesive with that?
Yeah, it can kind of be a little bit of both. So when somebody comes in, we start by saying, what date do you want to retire by? And, people might say, all right, 65 is when I'm targeting to retire. And then we take a look at their current state of their finances, how much they have saved, what they're saving every single year. We assume a certain growth rate, assume a certain rate of inflation, all that kind of stuff. We have to assume a certain amount that they're going to spend in retirement. And then we say, all right, on your current, track that you're going on, you're either on track or off track for the retirement date that you set. And so if you're on track, great. Let's try to tweak things and still help you save on taxes. Let's still optimize the plan. If you're off track, let's see what it would take to get to that target retirement date that you have. Maybe we need to save, 5 or 6% more every single year. Maybe we need to spend a little bit less. And if we think that's a realistic change to the plan, then great. We can implement it and still shoot for that retirement date. If we don't think that it's a realistic change, then maybe we need to push that retirement date back, add in some part-time work for a few years, whatever it might be. Obviously, that's, the harder conversation to have with
Yeah.
somebody. It's great when we get people that come in and they say, hey, I want to shoot for 65.
Yeah.
And we say, you could actually retire at 60 if you wanted to, based on your current savings. That's a much more fun conversation to have. But either way, we're going to, tell it to you straight and make sure that we set up a financial plan that works.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's almost as if anyone can start that planning. And what I mean is any age. You don't have to wait until you're close to retirement. I mean, it sounds like you need to start as soon as possible, as soon as you're receiving income, to have that plan, because it takes time, because you're essentially building a financial nest of money that you have to live off of when you're not working. And that sometimes can feel, when people are working paycheck to paycheck, for example, that can feel impossible.
Right.
So how do you really get people started young? How do you target young people? How do you encourage them that they need to start thinking about their finances as soon as they start working?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is when you see the value of compounding money. And so the money that you save the first 10 years of your working life is going to be the money that typically grows the most over the course of your retirement there. And so if you set that money aside early, even if you're not setting aside a lot, which a lot of people can't when they're younger, maybe they have young kids, maybe their income is a little bit lower, but even if you're setting aside a small percentage of your income, that's the money that has the most time in the market and typically grows the most. And so, starting early, even if it's a little bit, can just, pay significant dividends later on and set you up really well for retirement. If you wait until you're 45, 50 years old to start saving, you have to save a lot higher percentage of your income. And you've kind of established a lot of these habits where it's harder to cut back, 20% of your spending. That's a bigger cut than when you're younger. You're just coming out of college or something like that. You're used to living on ramen noodles and all that during those years. Maybe it's good to start then, even if it's a small amount.
Yeah, and is there a target amount that you typically recommend? I've heard the number before, like so many times what you make now is what you should have in your nest before retirement.
Yeah, that's really variable. And so I guess it's tough to give a set kind of rule of thumb answer on that, because some people have pensions in retirement. Some people are relying on Social Security. Some people don't want to rely on Social Security at all, even if they anticipate it being there. And people's just income is very different. Some people are making $100,000 and living on 50. Some people are making $100,000 and living on $100,000.
Right.
And so that's a very different lifestyle.
Yeah.
So just kind of multiplying income is difficult. And I think sometimes those rule of thumbs can be helpful for people. Sometimes they can be harmful because someone says, man, I need, $3 million saved at retirement. I'm way off, off my target. But they come in and we're like, look, you've got a pension here. This is going to set most of your income.
Right.
You're perfectly fine. And so everyone's plan is a little bit different. That's why, a financial plan can help give them the confidence they need to know exactly what nest egg dollar amount they need at retirement.
And you all know so much about the changing market and how what is it called? Just stipulations can impact them, or even giving advice to when they should start receiving some of these withdrawals. We always joke about these weird numbers that you have to start, taking allocations from, but also I think a big question that people wonder is, when should I take from my Social Security?
Right.
So all that goes into what you plan, and then you analyze, and then you just make sure they're on target, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a big decision. There's a lot of big decisions when it comes to finances, taking Social Security, what date to actually retire. There's a lot of important dates that we kind of focus on there. So, trying to put all that stuff together in a financial plan can be really helpful for people.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you would like more information about Foster Financial, listen, it is time to start getting your financial plan in place. You can give them a call for a complimentary consultation. We'll have their phone number listed below, and I'll see you after the break. This segment sponsored by Foster Financial.